Okay, cool. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming for this session. I know that it's been a long 2 days of just like stuff thrown at you left and right. I promise this will be a much lighter, sort of easygoing session. And please feel free to pause me at any time because this is a smaller room. My name is Sean. I work at Developer Experience at Netlify. That's my boss, Sarah, over there. Not to single her out while she's eating. And mostly, like, I'm pretty excited about just like making life easier for developers to create awesome experiences for the end users. And a lot of that it has been to do with the JAMstack, and that's what you heard about on day one with Sarah and Phil. I think the complement of the JAMstack is serverless, and I think that's why all of you are here. I think that there's a lot of potential to make to have that fruition of the full dynamic experience with JAMstack and serverless together. Netlify is a company to serve JAMstack developers. We're not the only JAMstack company. There are many others, competitors, predecessors, whatever. So this is just one way to do it. I just want to open your minds if you have never been exposed to something like this. And I know we have a very wide audience. I've spoken to a lot of you over these couple days. So pardon me if I go over something that you already know, but hopefully you'll have something to gain here as well from specifically the Netlify approach to serverless. Just as a brief thing, the entire workshop is contained on this single page. I had some of you. I pulled up a QR code, which I have now put down. If you want the QR code, it's over here. I think the majority of you already have it, but just that's a quick. Yeah. Okay. No one's raising their hands. Okay. So and this is I took Sarah's project from yesterday and ported it to React, and because it's in React, the animations are about 10 times more dynamic. Just because. That has nothing to do with serverless. But so what's the serverless pitch and why is it so important for JAMstack to have some sort of serverless story? Basically, JAMstack is about serving static assets, right? In much the same way as when you download an app on your mobile phone, you're downloading a static asset, but no one criticizes your mobile apps for being anything but static. Like you can do everything that you normally do. The problem is that you have to be able to spin up APIs. The JAMstack, the A in JAMstack is APIs. So you really rely on that for anything dynamic. And so we have to make the cost of creating APIs dramatically lower and dramatically easier. It doesn't have to be serverless. You can also have a stateful microservice, and a lot of long-running tasks can be scheduled, and workloads can be put on microservices. That's what I wanted to put at the outset. This is an example of like a typical workflow and how JAMstack. Let's have the door closed. That's how JAMstack and serverless work together. We have stuff that we deliver to the end user, but then once your JavaScript bundles on the client side, they're interacting with Netlify Functions. They're interacting with authentication services and databases and headless CMSs for those producing content heavy sites. We'll have some examples of this, but the problem with doing a workshop like this is that the possible space of things you can do is so limitless that there's no way I can cover any one possible way of them. My only goal is to hopefully dispel some common misconceptions we always see people run into and say like, hey, there's a solution for that, because it typically takes people a while to figure that out themselves. So I'm just here to tell you that it already exists. So why serverless? Just a really quick reminder for the two people in the room who haven't been sold on serverless. Pay per execution pricing, so if you're not using it, you don't get charged, and never pay for idle servers. Auto-scaling is also a pretty big selling point. Obviously, there are auto-scaling solutions and settings in other non-serverless environments, but this one is just auto-scale by default because you're already at the smallest unit of execution. Event-driven workflow, so this is something that's pretty alien, and that's why I put it in bold. If you're not used to it, it does take a little bit to get used to it, and the idea is that you rely on hooks to start multiple events. So like so one event happens, you go execute stuff. Once that operation completes, that calls another hook that then executes another thing and another thing. So it's a series of events, and therefore you don't have to maintain any state. You can just have a stateless service, and leveraging third-party services. I personally like this a lot because you may have noticed as a developer there's been a rise in the API economy, is what they call it. There are a bunch of venture capitalists active in this space. Obviously, Andreessen Horowitz and Kleiner Perkins active in Netlify, but also these other ones have built up JAMstack landscapes. I really like this part, which is third-party APIs. Entire multi-decacorn companies just built to serve developers, like basically commoditizing the stuff that you typically have to build by yourself. So more and more, like you're not spending your time on undifferentiated heavy lifting. You're just working on the business logic of what actually makes your product, your app, your site unique. So I like this. I like that. I like the Redpoint one as well. It's got more in it. Just like a whole bunch of logos, right? There's too much. The whole point is to tell you like all of these guys did not exist 10 years ago. The way of the options that you have as a developer have changed a lot, and now your velocity depends on your ability to glue all these services together and produce and pump up the products that fit your end customer and your user. Okay, so that's the spiel, and now we're going to do a little bit of live coding, demoing, and we'll end hopefully in half an hour. I'm not going to take the full hour because I want to leave space for questions. I think that some of you have probably more experience with Netlify and some of you don't. So this beginning part is more of a general intro. Where to go to learn about functions? Pretty simple, functionsplayground.netlify.com. Functions were only launched on Netlify about March of last year, and it's just like a continuing. How do I say? Like we're continuing to problem solve for our users. Like we noticed that JAMstack developers needed this functionality, and so we just brought it onto the platform. And so the typical for those people who this is familiar for anyone who's written AWS Lambdas, because we're an abstraction layer on top of AWS Lambdas for functions, as far as functions is concerned. But for people who haven't dealt with this, this is the typical signature of a function. It takes an event, context, and callback. And then it runs arbitrary logic, and at the end, it calls the callback to return whatever data. So, so here I'm just returning a string and saying hello world. In a more advanced situation, you'll probably be returning an object of data, and you'll be JSON stringifying that. That's cool, but it's kind of like a Node style, like callback hell type of thing. So in more recent versions of Node, we actually have the async await type of syntax. I just recommend doing this by default. Note that there's no usage of callback here. If you use both together, you may run into errors that are hard to debug. So just default to using async await. It just makes life a lot easier. So functions can take any sort of dynamic input as you typically would with the typical sort of REST world. So here we're using query string parameters, and we're interpolating that with hello whatever in this template literal. So that's the code that I have spinning, and you can actually try it out. So I can just say SmashingConf over here, and that's going to post to this Netlify function. And that's gonna say hello SmashingConf over here. That's gonna return the string. Note that the URL is just this simple line. So it's the URL of whatever site you're on, and then it's .netlify. That's the namespace that we have. It's the functions group, which is we've got other services that run, but this is specifically the functions. For this function, we call it hello name. I know I recognize this is really small for you, but I don't have any way of zooming in on that. And then obviously we're supplying the query string parameter name equals SmashingConf, and that's what was interpolated in that code that you just saw over there. So so like that's the very rough intro. And yeah, okay. So anything that you typically would do with REST, you can also do with the Netlify function. So here we can actually check the post, get, put, post, delete. And actually, do our operations based on that. You can put in a small little express server to handle that if you wish. Really do anything that you would normally do in in sort of the Node.js REST world, except having stateful endpoints, right? The whole point is to eliminate bugs by eliminate a whole category of bugs by just having a constraint that you write serverless functions. So I'm going to skip this, but obviously you can post to that using a usual HTTP process or using JavaScript, whatever you want. Then the next level of importance is environment variables. So this is stuff that we as a hosting platform for your functions inject environment variables into your functions so you can use them to do whatever you want. This is extremely useful for token hiding, where you don't want to expose your API tokens to your end users. So you basically just spin up a function, throw your API key in there, and use the function as a proxy for the ultimate service that you're querying. So over here, I have a greeting function set. This is a very special. I'm going to show you the behind the scenes of how I look at this. So I want to see what I set on this particular site. I have a Chrome extension. You can download this as well if you're a Netlify user. It's not working right now. Give me a sec. Yeah, there we go. So that pulls up the associated deploy logs because this site is open source. I can go into deploy settings. I can go into the environment variables, and I can see that I've set some environment variables here. I'm going to change that to hi SmashingConf. Oh, I should probably hi SmashingConf. I'm going to save that over here, and so that's my environment variables that I'm setting over there. And so now I can ping this function. And it's going to show me. I need to redeploy it before that runs again. But it's going to show me the environment variable that I set in that build setting. That's the word for it. Okay, so this is a super easy example, but you can see that there's a lot of information you can start to encode within your functions as well. That you don't actually have to especially when you're checking it into Git, you're not checking any secrets in, which is pretty important. All right, cool. So the other part of proxying to a third-party service is that you do need to ping APIs from within your functions. We use NodeFetch. I personally recommend Axios because Axios just has a nicer promise-based API, and NodeFetch has some annoying things annoying hidden dependencies that they refuse to correct. So that's super hard to debug when you run into that. But basically, it's all the same. It looks like the fetch API in JavaScript, and then you promise.json, and then you stringify the results and then you send back the results. So over here, we're pinging icanhasdadjoke.com. We're getting a JSON back. We're getting data. We're getting just the joke section of that. And that's pinging API through our custom function that we set up, and that's the source code. My seasickness comes in waves. That's not that. I don't know. Yeah. If you ever want dev jokes, by the way, I think Wes Boss, dev jokes, dad jokes. Yeah, these are better for tech jokes. So I want to make an API out of these. What do you call a busy waiter? A server? That's better. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So a little bit of digression over there. And then the last part in this tutorial, and really, if you're keen on ramping up really quickly on Netlify functions, I recommend going through this. It takes half an hour. Putting together a little Slack bot message from your site to your Slack channel. Again, this is. I just want to give you the idea that you can write glue code. It's the full power JavaScript to execute any function, any arbitrary compute that you want. So here you need a Slack account. I already have one. You can create an incoming Slack webhook. Again, the idea of event-driven workflow hooks from one event to another event to another event. Here we only have 2 events. To test the function, you can test the function locally. You can deploy it and put the endpoint in your build environment variables, which we've done over here. So it's going to call, and so this is the code of the Netlify function. It's gonna get the URL from your build environment variable. It's going to ping that with your arbitrary supplied text, and we're using querystring.parse over here, which is just another library to parse query strings. And then we'll have we can either show some success or error message. And so I'm going to demo it right now. I'm going to say SmashingConf here again, and you can say hello, and that's going to ping my function. It's called the hello Slack function, and it's a success. Obviously, if you don't want to navigate away from your page, you use JavaScript to just ping it. All this stuff. And over in my Slack channel inside of Netlify, it says exactly that. It says, it pings, it's received that incoming webhook. So think about all the other automation or event-driven use cases that you might be able to put together with your app. Obviously, like, my imagination is not that good, so I try to highlight some special use cases for people. This is the top support request on Netlify. Like, I'm a front-end developer. I want to use a third-party API like Google Maps, but I don't want to show my API key to the end user. How do I hide that? And so we call this the token hider. Wow, this link doesn't work. Okay. Anyway, why does this not work? Okay, I think I screwed that up in my. Oh, I forgot the href. Okay. How do I fix this? Okay. I can go to the source code. Let's see. Href. Blah blah blah. Oh, it's a markdown. Great. I put this together this morning. Okay, so you can, like, if you have any questions like that, you can always check in with our community site. We recently launched this to basically allow community members to help each other out, and then also have a publicly searchable log of all of our responses, so that Google becomes our community support. But basically, token hiding, I hope I've established the value of that, especially for anyone using third-party APIs. Post scheduling, this is a pretty cool one. A lot of people want to use the JAMstack, but for example, they can't think about, like, when I want to publish something, I want to go out on a certain date or time, and like, you need a service around to help you schedule a post to be published, and so you don't have to be manually deploying the thing. And so here's a tool to sort of show you how to do that. You basically set a key. You put a comment in your pull request saying schedule and then month, date, year, time, and it automatically schedules it. And when the time is hit, the PR is merged and your site goes live. Again, that's an event-driven workflow with basically like a small little cron service going on down in there. So really small, really helpful. And again, these are all like real problems that people run into. OAuth flows, I really like this one. Basically, I basically screwed up my MDX. I was like experimenting with MDX, and I forgot the href. But yeah, so basically building OAuth apps and then getting this really complicated event-driven thing. As some of you probably know, when you're implementing OAuth, it relies on the system of callbacks to grant the tokens and stuff. So this is all done serverlessly. Like, you can use Netlify Identity as an identity provider. You can use Google, Okta, Auth0, whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. The point is, you can do all this with serverless functions. URL shortener. So this one's from our friend Kenzie Dodds. He obviously has a lot of content and actually created this Netlify URL shortener to put links that he commonly refers to. So all these things are very, very small examples, but hopefully give you an idea of the kind of functionality you can compose together for a particular use case. Again, I can't answer everything, but Kent, being Kent, produces a hell of a lot of content, including live coding stream where he just shows you how to set it up from scratch. Again, all the links are here once I fix the links. Jeez, I really want to fix the links right now, but I can't. You know what? I'm gonna do it. So what I've been using right here, this is Markdown, but it's using my custom React components, and it's all in here. Basically, I forgot to pass the hrefs. Done in here, and I just needed to pass it in as a prop down here. So this is Markdown, where you can use React components inside of, MDX, where you can use your React components inside your Markdown. And I need something like a href string. Sorry, I'm like live fixing my code right now, which is not like the best in the world. Okay, that's great. I think I fixed it. All right, I'm gonna use that for deploy. Okay, so let's keep going. So one of the big categories of people's limiting beliefs when it comes to function execution is that it needs to be an event that happens with human interaction. That is not true. It's super easy to set up cron jobs, super easy to set up automation from all these services. Like most of them are free. And yeah, like I just want to make it very abundantly clear that you can set up cron jobs for anything that needs to happen on a schedule, including posting or just polling something. It doesn't really matter. You already saw Phil Hawksworth's talk where he showed you he set a cron job for every minute, and then he made a clock out of that, like a statically deployed clock. So that's pretty fun as well. Let me switch to my fixed slides. All right, so this should be. Where's my code? Yay, the links work. All right. Live coding. So that's one category of schedule functions. The other category that people get hung up on is how to do authenticated functions. So basically, I don't want anyone to be able to ping that function. I just want people that are my friends. Netlify also offers an authentication service called Netlify Identity, but you don't have to use it. You can use anyone else's authentication service. Just basically guard it with guard your function. Let's actually see an example of that. So over here we have token hider. So we have the code examples. I'm recording this talk, by the way. I'll put it on my YouTube, but also just know you can Google everything if you need it. Or you can get in touch with our support. We're pretty friendly. So here's the token hider example. You can write a little token hider. Nope, that's the demo. That's the Lambda. Why am I showing you the token hider? I need to show you authentication. Hang on. Function templates. There we go. Functions templates JS. And so this is the part where I'll get to this in a second. But basically, I just wanted to show you the rough intuition of how authenticated functions work. Here's like the core of the logic that you want to execute. But basically, you want to early return, and you want to say, hey, you're not authenticated if I don't detect that you're logged in or something. And typically, this relies on passing in a JSON web token. That's another of the mindset shifts that you have to make. You no longer have sessions on the server because there are no servers, so you have to switch to a JWT token-based approach. We make it super, like, one of Netlify's selling points. That's one of the things I loved before I became an employee. Was that, like, typically if you were to do this on AWS, you'd have to like pull together like your IAM services and like your API gateways and your Lambda and manually set it up yourself. But here you're literally just like you check in the context object, and we insert this special object that only exists on Netlify function, and you say like if this identity field exists, then the person's logged in. If not, then throw the person out. So that's the rough intuition for how to do authenticated functions. Yeah, I told you about, I recently did a live stream putting all these things together with Gatsby, Netlify Identity, Netlify Functions. So you're welcome to check that out. If you want to just skip straight to the point, I have a Gatsby starter. Again, if you don't have to use Gatsby, I'm just like, this is one of the many demos that we could possibly do. And so this is a static site, right? Like with a lot of dynamic functionality. Like here I have a marketing page, and let's just pretend I have an app page. Here I'm already logged in, but I'm just gonna log out right now. And I can implement this full login service and have that full dynamic app experience, but all of this is serverless, right? Like the whole point is to have this JAMstack experience. And here I can go over to my main function, and I can ping my protected authenticated function behind an API wall. If I was not even logged in, this would just not even return. So that's the rough idea. That there's plenty of example code. We do need more examples. We are hiring for people to help build examples, but also just like we want to just establish the idea that we're technology agnostic. Like you don't have to use React with Netlify. You don't have to use Gatsby with Netlify. As long as you know JS, you're fully qualified to interact with all these APIs. We have a identity widget that's framework agnostic. This one's implemented with Preact, but basically, oh, I'm not running a local server. Okay, okay. Well, maybe I can just do this. Yeah. All right. So basically, you can drop in this modal on top of any existing site that you're working on, and for any like sort of side project or any MVP, I really like this workflow because you're not wasting time writing an off service. You're just you're just dropping one in. I have a smaller this is a pretty self-contained component. I have a smaller one that assumes you use React, and it does exactly the same thing. You can also enable. We also offer as a first-party thing authentication, third-party authentication providers like Google, GitHub, so people don't have to sign up with username and passwords. Okay, but that's not functions. This is more the authentication pitch. But I just want to demonstrate that it's really well integrated. Obviously, you can use Okta and Auth0 as well. JWTs, if you go really deep into like InfoSec Twitter, you get people who hate JWTs a lot and tell you never to use them. There are other alternatives that have arisen with Pasito, which apparently solves some of the spec issues with JWTs. But overall, we don't have any problems deploying JWTs in production if you don't use them as long-lived sessions, basically. App.netlify.com, which is the site that everyone uses and knows and loves, app.netlify.com runs on Netlify, and all that entire authentication experience is behind. Do I just say app? Yeah, so this is app.netlify.com, viewing app.netlify.com. It's very meta. Okay, so all right, so even more examples because we like to drown you with the endless, boundless possibilities of them. You can send email, you can process payment by Stripe, you can send email again, different providers. You can fetch files from Google Drive. Basically, just a whole bunch of third-party APIs that you stitch together to make your products. That's pretty cool, and yeah, I think that's the rough pitch here. Okay, so if you want to learn more, we actually have an open source workshop. It's the Netlify Functions workshop where you can actually go through step by step and practice and compare your completed code with your code with the completed code, and in case any conceptual disparities come up. Yeah. Basically, this is like a full day workshop. We're not going to go through all of it, but I just want to tell you that it's there. Obviously, the link is in the notes as well. Actually, let me just commit this to Git and deploy really quick because this is Netlify, right? Fix a tag. All right. Okay, so there's a live stream that I've done as well with setting up a database. So obviously, the only thing that Netlify functions give you is serverless compute, but you also need serverless persistence. You also need serverless authentication. There's all these like the different little sections of your backend that do need to be sort of reconstituted if you want to put them, if you want to glue them together. So this is Hasura, one of our friends. Like they're a GraphQL compiler down to SQL, and they're just like really fun to work with as well. And they're also event driven. So so basically you can execute. Like once data has been stored, they can actually call another function, and you can chain together multiple functions to do a lot of processing based on data coming in. So very powerful workflows that are built from these primitives. Let's see. These are what am I typing here? I don't know. These are some of our larger sort of community friends. They've also written tutorials. I like that because basically you want tutorials about your thing being written by people who don't know that super well, so that they can talk with the beginner's mind. I like to answer the pricing question up front. The free tier is up to 125 calls per month. That's 3 calls a minute, and that's and then the minimal paid tier is like $20, and it's like 2 million calls a month. And the details are on netlify.com/pricing, which again you don't have to use, but it's totally up to you. Oh, where's the pricing page? Oh, yeah, functions over here. So that's the free tier. That's the paid tier, 25 a month, and then you can buy a smaller package. And then if you're enterprise, obviously it's a call-less type of deal. But most people don't run into that. Okay, so here's the live coding part. Basically, what I've done is so we have a Netlify CLI, and basically here this site, I've basically cloned Sarah's demo from yesterday into this app. So I have this on localhost 3001 apparently, and it's got the crazy animations. It's got her projects all pre-rendered. It's got this lunch and learn. It's got the source code. Okay, so I just want to show you how to work with our CLI, because one of the problems with adopting serverless functions is that like you're not really quite sure of how, like, you're looking up tutorials and you're looking up documentation. We just want to make that really super easy. So we literally put code in your desktop. So over here I have basically like a typical project. This one is actually React static. You can use Gatsby, you can use Jekyll, it doesn't really matter what. Again, Netlify is very tech agnostic from that respect. Here I have a netlify.toml set up with a functions folder. So typically when you deploy through Netlify, you have like a build command to build your static site. You have a publish command to tell Netlify which folder to publish from. Here's the new field inside of your netlify.toml file, which is the functions folder, to tell Netlify where to deploy the functions. I don't have one here, but it's going to create it for me as I scaffold it. So over in the Netlify CLI, so it's Netlify -CLI when you install it, npm. So it's like npm install global Netlify CLI. I already have it installed, and in fact, I'm running the local build, so it's going to be a little bit slower because I'm running it uncompiled. You can run it. So you can run it. Crap. What am I doing? Okay, you can run it. You can type Netlify Functions create. That's the really long and wordy version. I liked, and we also recognize NTL Functions create. See, I hate typing this. Me being super lazy, I actually alias this, so I only type NFC. So I recommend that as well, and you'll see that in our docs. Down in here, we actually we actually have a bunch of templates. That the ones that I showed you earlier. All of these are open source. We do welcome contributions. Here. So all these are open source examples of functions. If you ever want to get started scaffolding functions within your project, no matter what the project, you can actually just type in Netlify Functions create. You can pick from all of these templates, which are pretty cool. If you actually want just like a simple hello world, you can also do that, and it filters out hello world. And so that creates the functions folder over here. I can click into that and see the very basic hello world example. You're already familiar with this kind of signature because it's exactly what I showed you with the functions playground. Typically from here, you can actually go ahead and deploy that already. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy that because why not? I'm just going to add it to Git. And then I'm going to say git push origin master. Again, I have a lot of aliases, so I don't have to type stuff out, but I assume everyone knows what this is. You can also run Netlify open to watch your function get deployed. So the idea is that this is what we call atomic commits, where you check your functions into Git and you deploy them together with your front end. They're all versions together with your commits. So theoretically, they will never break, although if you have external dependencies, they will break if your external dependencies do change. Okay, so that's building, but it's also going to tell you what functions it's picking up, and then I'll be able to show you what the hello world function does fully deployed. Don't worry, I'm building up to something big at the end, but I have to like walk you through this to make this magical. All right, so what other kinds of this is the basic functions format we're telling people to adopt. Basically a folder called hello world, and then the name of the file reflecting that folder. So basically you can have multiple files that are all imported and used by that single entry point. I don't know how much I'm like telling you that you already know, but I'm just like erring on the side of telling you too much. If we need, so that's a very simple like node dependency thing. If you need node modules, we'll install it for you as well. If it's like a recognized thing, obviously you can install it yourself. So here's an example of authentication fetch function where it uses the node fetch library. So I'm just going to hit that, enter again. You can obviously rename your function however you like. It's installing the dependencies. I need to delete this because that's the thing that I'm going to show you at the end. Okay. Yes. Okay, you never saw that. But so here this off function looks slightly different from a hello world function. The hello world function had no dependencies. This one does have a dependency on node fetch. So we install the node modules right in that function. So it's sort of modular in that way. And you're obviously welcome to use your normal yarn npm install to install other dependencies that your functions need to use. And so here, and this is this typical signature that I already showed you with regards to putting authentication wall behind your functions. Okay, so we should already be deployed over here. We can see that the Netlify buildbot detected one function to upload. So we'll be able to see this over here. It says view functions to production, and it's detected that the hello world that we spun up. Let's actually grab this endpoint up in here. So we'll see an invocation of hello world. I think we can also supply a query name. So exactly like how we did that, but we just spun it up live, right? Toronto. I'm like, okay, that's supposed to be Toronto over there. We can actually use like some kind of spell check library in there as well. All right, very cool. So what else are we going to talk about? Let's see over here. GraphQL API. Okay, so something sort of a crazier example. Like obviously, I have a lot of templates built in there, and obviously don't feel restricted to use only our templates. In fact, you can actually give us a GitHub URL, and we'll clone from whatever your own directory of functions that you maintain. But one thing I wanted to show you off is for those in the room that are interested in GraphQL, we actually help you spin up a GraphQL endpoint really easily. And I think Serverless actually works really well with GraphQL because each individual resolver can be a function endpoint. Can be a function. It has a setup script. Oh, I ran the wrong scaffold. Hang on, give me a second. Functions GraphQL. Okay. Let me just get rid of the other stuff because we don't need it anymore. I like when I deleted the function, the dependency for it also went away. So that's really super nice. So I wasn't gonna go for GraphQL. I was gonna go for GraphQL Apollo, right? So people who are interested in spinning up GraphQL endpoints for themselves, this is more of the backend for front end pattern. So on the front end, you're interested in using GraphQL. On the back end, you're still using a mix of services, REST and what have you. But you can use this. You can use the serverless function as an interface that speaks to your backend. And so over here, it's setting up the Apollo server endpoint for you. This is a very simple example. You can obviously make it as complicated as you like. But then the question comes like, I was only able to test it once I deployed it. We wanted people to be able to locally test before they deploy, and that's the next level of problem solving. So that's why we launched Netlify Dev this April. I was one of the lead CLI people on it, and basically the idea is to run a local server, running your project dev server alongside of a standalone functions emulator. To locally test that functionality. So that's what we're going to do. Typically, you'd run Netlify Dev like that, but because I'm me, I only run ND. And basically what that's going to do is, okay, again, ignore that because I accidentally put that in there. So it's going to run my project. Here it's React static, but it could equivalently be Jekyll or Hugo. And it's going to run all that functionality, but then it's also going to spin up a function server. So over here it's pick the port 34567, and then it's going to give us a combined port where it's going to have both the project as well as the functions locally deployed. So over here I can say .netlify functions Apollo GraphQL, and I have the GraphQL endpoint that I just spun up in that serverless function. And obviously you can query that. You can see that. Let me just set this up for you. So when I query this, I can get the data. You can see you can console log out stuff from the server side, and all of this is localhost. So you can actually shorten the feedback cycle when you're developing your serverless functions together with your front end. So I really like that example, and I think that probably brings us to the last point now that I wanted to make, which is we wanted to actually no. You know what? Let me show you. So if you wanted to learn more about Netlify Dev, you can go to the Netlify Dev repo. There are other marketing pages, but this is if you're actually going to use it, the docs are located here. You can watch the introduction. I'm basically giving you the introduction right now, but that's the rough intuition that I wanted you to have. Basically, your dev server is going to be running on this port. We're going to listen for that port. We're going to throw in all the other extra functionality, like testing your redirects that you'll be setting up on Netlify, testing your functions, and testing third-party add-ons. And that's something that's new to Netlify as well. We want to be able to, we wanted you to be able to spin up instances of third-party add-ons as easily as you scaffold a function. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. But the whole intuition is that Netlify Dev is a single central point, and your local browser just points to that instead of your. Typically, you'd be navigating that dev servers project only for that. The hot reloading of that particular project. Whew. Okay, so I'm gonna close all this because I feel like I've spammed out so much. I'm gonna reset. So accidentally I ran that command I was gonna run at the end. I ran that a little bit too early. So I'm gonna reset it from scratch. But this is the idea of we want to eventually be able to make it so easy to provision third-party APIs that you just are spinning up your services really quickly. So what we have here is again I have an empty functions folder, and I'm going to spin up a GraphQL API with one of our database partners, FaunaDB. So over here we have some templates. I'm going to pick the Fauna GraphQL template. So it's gonna scaffold out the Fauna function for me. So again, I don't have to read the docs. It's all commented in there easily for me. It's going to create the add-on provision from that third-party service. It's going to inject the environment variables that you typically have to manually type in. You now no longer do need to do that. And I've already created a setup script, so I've specified that, and I can tell it to run it for me. So over here, basically, the setup script basically takes a GraphQL schema, uploads it, and then generates a database based on that schema. So I'm just gonna say SmashingConf Boolean over here. I just realized, yeah, okay. So it's gonna, yeah. So whatever. I'm just editing this so you know it's live. Then I'm gonna let the schema run. And now it's run. Sorry, now it's initialized. You can obviously do database migrations as well if you needed. So then I'm running Netlify Dev, and it's spinning up that local host server on the port that I want, which is 8888. And now I have that new functionality, which is called Fauna-GraphQL. Crap. Why did it open? I pressed the wrong button. And again, this is a schema that has been set up for me. And here's the custom field that I set up just for this presentation. And so let me show you that I can actually use it to do CRUD operations. So here I have create to do. It's a to do list, but whatever, you know the typical CRUD stuff. SmashingConf. So I'm going to create SmashingConf. Have lunch. Whatever. I just created a bunch of to-dos from this GraphQL operation, and now when I query them, you should be able to see the two to-dos that I just created as well. Okay, hang on. Set the wrong schema. So all of this can be done. So I just set up the backend, right? It took me no time at all. you can use this on your front end to start iterating pretty quickly because you basically just copy and paste this over to your front end. So that's the overall GraphQL pitch. I'm not here to sell you on GraphQL, but that's the rough idea. The last part of functionality that I want to show you today is Netlify Dev Live, which is live sharing with your coworkers. And that's kind of like the wow moment. Unfortunately, I followed the wrong series of steps to get there. So again, I have to delete the add-on and re-provision them. I don't think they're very happy about me doing this. But whatever, it's demo time, right? All right, so I'm going to delete this again and spin up yet another. I think I've like spun up like 6 databases, like trying to practice with this. So again, so instead of the GraphQL endpoint, I'm going to spin up a REST one. So I'm going to spin up fauna CRUD database. And again, like it's very nice to have like in situ. I guess is the Latin term for this, but like you know, the like not only do I have documentation for like the code that I'm using in my project, like it actually is just like verified to work, and we set up all the third-party endpoints for you. So that's pretty cool. I really like that. And so now it's created a database. So I cheated a little bit in my preparation for this workshop. I actually created a so apart from the pages that you already saw, I created a guestbook. The guestbook pings that API and does some CRUD operations with that. So I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna run Netlify Dev -- live, and that's gonna be viewable on your phones, which I'm gonna ask you to take out in a second. Obviously, me being me, I run the NDL alias for that, and so it's spinning out the project. It's inserting the environment variable, which notice I never had to manually enter. I don't even know what it is, but it's pulling all of that and running it locally so I can test it. This is kind of like the testing in production mentality, and so now it's created this endpoint, which is I think it's like a Kubernetes pod that is spun up, and we've provisioned this exact namespace on the Netlify.live thing. And so here I have a link to my guestbook. I have a QR code that you can actually check out right now. So for those of you who are open to helping me demo some CRUD functionality, again, these are static sites. Static doesn't mean static functionality, right? So most of you will have this QR code. Basically, and the theme for this is the Revengers, like this is like the bad guy alternative to the Avengers. And this is what we demoed when we launched Netlify Dev. So I'm just kind of bringing you up to speed on how we think people can use this in their workflows. And the idea is that you have this on your phones, it live updates, so people can type in their names and leave a message. So this is like a little guestbook type of thing, like smashing, this is great, and it live updates. And I'm gonna let some people fill in some evil messages. Please don't, no one like not safe for work stuff, because I don't have any filtering on that, even though you could implement it with your functions. All right, Dr. Soup is in. We have a bunch of other functionality as well. So, but like, hopefully you get the idea that you have this shareable URL. This is running on my local machine. I haven't published or deployed anything yet, but it's got that full functionality as though it was in production. And basically, that's the idea of Netlify Dev. It's our entire platform on your local machine. And that live functionality is more to share with your coworkers, your designers, your product managers, what have you. All right, we have a bunch of additions as well. And so the last point I wanted to do, like we're real big fans of the Avengers over at Netlify. So we actually created this script called finger snap, and we're gonna snap our fingers and try to eliminate 50% of of the comments over here. And so I'm running a script locally. I need the API keys to interact with the database. And that's something that Netlify Dev allows me to do by basically saying Netlify Dev exec. And this is the command that you can read the docs for this. But I just want to show you that it's possible. And it says finger snap.js. Me being me, obviously, it's called ndx. Finger snap.js. And now it's gonna slowly snap. Oh. I need to say ndx node because it doesn't know what runtime to use. So it's going to finger snap individual people. and that's going to halve the overall functionality. So again, me executing scripts, interacting with my database locally, I've got all those API secrets. It's a pretty good workflow for working with serverless functions on Netlify. All right, I'm going to pause here and take questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, and I feel, yeah, okay, hi.
So I'm kind of curious about this and kind of coming from the microservice world, like you've got a lot of little moving pieces everywhere. What strategies have you seen for successfully managing like package stitching, like libraries of APIs or catalogs where these are things that we're currently using that are outside that we want to keep track of, or all the moving parts that are going on here where you don't have everything in one go. And you've got this like sort of distributed complexity of small.
All I'd say that is we don't have an opinion on that. It's up to you to do your own sort of service management, if that's what you call it.
Yeah, but have you seen anything that's sort of interesting?
Not really. This is more like an internal docs type of situation. Especially like I like the pattern of like you don't have to use again like that. I mean I stress a lot that you don't have to use serverless for everything because like if you have a million different little functions, it's hard to know what's going on. Although we're shipping analytics soon to tell people what they're using. Sometimes that's pretty helpful. But if you have a group of functionality that all belongs together, maybe that's one microservice that you just run as on its own. Apart from that, no, I mean this is up to you in terms of your organizational management. We don't have any opinion on that. Yeah. Hi.
So I'm new to this JAMstack thing, and in your perspective, where is this thing heading, JAMstack, and what's the roadmap of Netlify to map that?
Okay. That's an interesting question. What is the roadmap of Netlify? Let's just tell you all the secrets. So just ignore that. That's a Chrome extension I use for myself. So this is the rough mapping of what we think people want to use. Basically, JAMstack is basically a movement towards a simpler architecture. I really recommend this video from, again, it was like SmashingConf. SmashingConf, yes. So we launched it in 2016 at SmashingConf in San Francisco, I guess. And this was the explanation. This was like the rough pitch for like what this movement is about. Why it's fundamentally a simpler architecture. I can't. There's like a chart I want to show you, right? I can't see it. Okay, I can't see it. But basically the idea is that the rise of the API economy, the rise of JavaScript frameworks that allow you to do server-side, static side generation, and then hydration on the front end, and then taking that to do more dynamic stuff, which is exactly the functionality that you just saw. The time is now rather than 10 years ago because all these things did not exist 10 years ago. We encourage static site generation basically as a performance best practice, but you don't have to do static site generation. You can use Create React App and just do a traditional single page app. The whole point is to have a viable competitor. Just like fundamentally simplify like all this like complicated deployment stuff that is basically undifferentiated, right? Like it's not what you want to spend most of your time managing. I was talking with someone who was like managing, projects. He was like it's like a one-man agency, and he was managing projects for his clients. And he was like doing marketing sites, and he was like, yeah, I'm on pager duty for my marketing site, and it's just pointless. Like you should just be generating static sites and just and just not worrying about it because you're relying on a CDN. So Netlify is a CDN first. But then we're expanding, so that's what we call Netlify Edge. We want to enable you to do complicated sort of edge logic as well if you need like local sort of internationalization, that kind of stuff. We actually have demos of that going on, but that's something I personally don't know so well, and we're going to build more on that with basically like advanced like. So if you read anything about Cloudflare workers, that's kind of like the direction that the entire industry is kind of going into. It's so Netlify Dev is that local dev story where you can locally test and emulate and all that. And then Netlify Build is the build bot that most people already use. investing to upgrade that as well. But that's the rough roadmap. We're launching something next week at JAMstack London that basically is a large feature request, and we just continue to solve problems for the JAMstack user. Like the whole point is that like JAMstack is a movement that's bigger than Netlify. We just want to really serve that super well, and hopefully win people's hearts and minds and wallets that way. Yeah, it's not really more complicated than that. Yeah, I mean, I like to tell people like Netlify Functions is only like it was only launched in March, and only that's like so. Is this? It's gonna redirect. Netlify used to be a drag and drop site deploy thing. It used to be called Bitballoon. That's the previous iteration, and this was like the whole simplicity of GeoCities. Like you just build locally and then drag and drop and deploy it, right? And then we were like, problem solving, and then we realized people want continuous deployment from Git, and that's why we turned into Netlify and started linking to GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab. And then once like people were generating static sites, then people were like, oh, like, well, we need all this like identity and forms handling, and that's why we have all these other products, Netlify Forms. This is a big one where like if people are leaving, comments, sales inquiries, whatever, we offer forms handling as an endpoint as well. So basically, like this is the entire feature set, right? There's no way I can cover all of that, but the whole point is like people who are bought into this one restriction, which is no servers. What can we do to like build out a full set of functionality to serve that developer? I really like the split testing one, where like let's set up split testing on the site on. We already have this. So we're actually trialing a 3.0 version of our app.netlify.com, and we actually use split testing to basically do product feature flagging. And because we assume that everyone uses Git, then like the API surface area is very low. It's basically just have a different branch, and you can do your feature testing in that. It's pretty simple, and it's just like a little like fun little thingy UI. So I really like it. Hopefully it's a like super long, complicated answer, but like it's not simple, right? Because like it's a huge platform. There's a lot of features to it, but with simplicity at its core, and that's what we're trying to get people to adopt, because we don't see any other alternative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I'm new to like the whole serverless world, but so like, do you have to kind of be full in? Like, I don't know if there's really a use case for this, but like, say you have like your enterprise level app and whatever, you're using old school backend servers, but for some reason you have like, a particular function, like some kind of functionality, like, hey, it would make a lot of sense to actually have a thing over here. Like, so I guess it's like a long-winded way of asking, like, do you need to be full on serverless?
No.
To use one of the, and you don't necessarily need to be like deployed on
Netlify. Yeah.
To like to be able to make use of like the serverless functions.
Yeah. No, you don't. So like that's. I actually kind of think like this is like a politics thing. Like like a lot of times you have to like do this meeting, like a really intense meeting with like your backend. Like they have to do this like ownership handover and like design and all that. And basically you just want to like prototype new functionality and just like adapt it to your front end, because you're building products. And it's as simple as calling an endpoint, right? Like there's no restriction on you calling endpoints.
And then it's just like OAuth is like just the way you say like, hey, I'm the person. I know you went into that a little bit, but you're just like, hey, I'm the guy who's actually supposed to call this function, and I'm not going to pay for this guy right here.
Yeah. So I really like, especially for again, like maybe this is me because I do a lot of speaking on GraphQL as well. But for people who want to adopt GraphQL, actually the front-end developers tend to love it, but back-end developers hate it because it's a whole different paradigm. And typically, what I tell people to do is spin up a GraphQL gateway on the front end, so they can use GraphQL on the front end, but then just prototype all this stuff, and then eventually have the schema ready, so that when the back-end developers eventually buy in, they can just hand it over and saying that we've done the majority of the prototyping for you. And that's the back-end for front-end BFF approach, which like. But like this is real. Like people, especially if you're a mobile dev, like this is your life. And serverless functions are a fantastic use case for that.
And does that make sense? Like, does it make sense like for there to be kind of like this mix of the two worlds? Like, hey, like,
yeah,
if your app's already relying on it, is just fine. I can use serverless.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Are you seeing a lot of usage cases for like headless CMS and that type of thing as well too, getting away kind of the traditional like WordPress interval type of style and more towards this, or is this really more app kind of specific?
I see. I don't know the answer to that question. I feel like the headless CMS is a thing. A lot of people, content-heavy sites use that, but you run into problems the moment you want to do a thing that they don't let you do. So that's why I pitch serverless functions as glue code. Like it's arbitrary compute for you to do the things, exactly the things that they don't let you do. So it depends on your needs. Like, it's if you just have a straightforward content site, then no, you don't need it at all. But this, what is that? Do we have to run? Do we have to defuse a bomb? Okay. Okay. Yeah, but hopefully that answers questions. All right. I'm gonna call it to an end. Thank you very much, and you can come to me here for more questions. Thank you very much.
What was that YouTube